All right, so thank you all for joining us today. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about who you are, what you do with the Ballard, and what your background is? John, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. My name is John Bell, and I'm a puppeteer, and I am the director of the Ballard Institute and Museum of Puppetry, and I also teach in the Puppet Arts program at UConn's School of Fine Arts.
My name is Paulette Richards. I'm a puppet artist and independent researcher. I was the co-curator with John on the Living Objects African American Puppetry exhibit, and I'm currently planning another African American puppetry exhibit for the Center for Puppetry Arts here in Atlanta, where I live.
My name is Emily Wicks. I'm the manager of operations and collections at the Ballard Institute Museum of Puppetry.
Excellent. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Living Objects is, what it's all about, how it came about. We'd love to hear the story.
We wanted to bring together different aspects of African American puppetry in all different forms, and began to work with Paulette as the co-curator, and also an advisory group of African American puppeteers and performers to kind of think about this subject, because as far as I know, it hasn't really been addressed before in the form of an exhibition or in the form of a conference or symposium or collection of written articles. So we ended up creating this exhibition of many different artists, and then during the exhibition time, we hosted a conference and festival and symposium, which allowed us to bring together a lot of African American puppeteers as well as performers, and that was a really amazing event, because we got to sort of see each other and meet each other and share with each other what kind of work is being done, and also how scholars and performers are thinking about African American puppetry.
Paulette, why don't you talk a little about your process in curating this?
In 2015, I came to the Puppeteers of America National Festival at the University of Connecticut. There was an exhibit of puppets that were used for education at the Dodd Center, and some of them were Black figures. And I, at the time, had a blog about Black dolls, so I thought that my readers would be interested in that. And I mentioned Black dolls to the archivist, and they're like, "Oh, we have a whole object collection of Black dolls." And they kindly allowed me to look at that collection and photograph some of those objects for my blog. In the meantime, I had met Valeska Popolo at the festival. And so when I finished the blog post, I sent her the link, and that sort of put me in the orbit of people who were interested in African American dolls and puppets. So that's kind of how I got hooked up with co-curating the exhibit.
Emily, for you, how about you talk about your favorite aspect of this whole thing?
I think my favorite aspect of the whole project, I mean, I love the exhibition side of things. So I think really being able to help take Paulette and John's vision and turn it into an exhibition. And I think it was probably our biggest undertaking exhibit-wise, and kind of the collaborations that went into it were much more extensive than what they normally are. The fact that we were working with over 25 artists, a digital media class, a graphic design professor, the UConn library system, to kind of all make it happen was really exciting. And then I think once we added in this festival and symposium element, which is something that we don't normally do, that was really special, because it's one thing to kind of see an object on display that's by an artist, but to actually bring all the artists together in one weekend in one place, which hadn't really been done before. It was kind of just a really magical experience to have everyone together, and it was just very inspiring, and you could see kind of new relationships blossoming and new kind of creative opportunities coming about. And so I think for me, that was kind of the most special aspect of it, was kind of taking it from this very beginning idea, which was the exhibit, and having these objects, but then actually bringing the artist who created them and more people together to kind of really celebrate it.
Yeah, and it does sound like there are more things still to come. I know there's a website in progress. There's also the Puppetry Forum coming out. Can we talk a little bit more about what people can expect to find there?
We are documenting the exhibition, but we had also from the very beginning thought of having a catalog, the kind of published catalog that you often find connected to an exhibition with photographs and essays. And in talking with our Dean Andeleva, she suggested we try to do something like that online. So we did. That now includes a kind of virtual exhibit that has photographs and descriptions of all of the different objects on display, together with biographies, short biographies of all of the artists. And then what we've been putting together recently, Paulette and myself, Paulette is the editor, or maybe I'm the co-editor, of the essays. We have about 21 or 22 different essays, scripts, interviews, and other works, some of which were presented as part of the symposium we held, and other things that came in later through Paulette's efforts. And those are, for me, really exciting because it amounts to a kind of anthology of about African-American puppetry, the history of African-American puppetry, and the way Paulette's designed it, minstrel performance and the history of African-American puppetry and community, Afro-diasporic storytelling and culture, representations and appropriations of Blackness, puppet plays, and next steps. So I feel like it's a real, I think it can be and will be a real contribution to scholarly studies of this aspect of Africana studies, African-American culture. Also, I think it'll be useful for puppeteers around the United States and around the world. So I'm really excited about that. And the site's also going to include video documentations of most of the symposium sessions that were held, which were really interesting comings together, and a lot of the performances that were part of the festival.
But what to you is the most inspiring thing about living objects?
At the opening that weekend was also the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Black student. You have to tell me the terminology.
The African American Cultural Center.
Yes, the African American Cultural Center. And so what was really inspiring for me was that some of the funding for the Living Objects project was part of the money that had been allocated for that celebration. And so to think that the students who sat in and protested to have some representation of their culture on campus 50 years earlier had resulted in this exhibit, that was really inspiring for me.
So are there any other projects that we should keep an eye out for?
I know that Paulette is very busy doing a lot of different work, writing projects and organizing with Unima USA, which is the American branch of the Union Internationale de la Marionnette. But here at UConn, at the Ballard Institute, we're having one of our puppet forums on Thursday, October 22nd, that Paulette pulled together, called The Renaissance of African American Object Performance with Dr. Richards and Edna Bland from Florida, who also was part of our the Living Objects team, Dr. Schroeder Cherry from the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, who's a puppeteer and museum educator, and then Anwar Floyd Pruitt, an artist from, I think, Wisconsin, who Paulette brought into this, and whose work I realized after hearing about him from Paulette is really amazing. But Paulette, you put this together, so.
It will be nice to see some old friends and have a conversation and celebrate the long-awaited, shall we say, publication in a sense of the full online catalog with the essays. Those are an invaluable resource. I've already been digging, since I have access to them, I've already been using Dr. Isabella Brochado's work on Mamulengo, which is an Afro-Brazilian form of puppetry, in some of my own writing, and I know that the rest of the material will be useful to other researchers going forward.
Yeah, I'm really proud that we've been able to do this, and it's been a real strong experience and an educational experience for me, and to understand, the range of work from Paulette's work to the work of Tychicus Baker and Al Tony Simon, who are formerly incarcerated men puppeteers in New York City, to the scholarly work of Ra Malaika Imhotep. It's like a door opening into this very rich and important, I think, aspect of American culture and puppet culture that a lot of puppeteers have not been aware of, and to be able to think about that, and to be able to think about African American puppetry in terms of U.S. culture is a gift. So I appreciate that Paulette's made so much of that possible, and that the Ballard Institute and the School of Fine Arts in UConn have been able to benefit from that. And also I appreciate Paulette talking about the fact that the Dodd Center was a real spur for her to think about this. That's like another reason, another UConn connection that's super important.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank
Enjoy.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paulette. Thanks, Emily.